In the last unit, we learned about triads and the interval formulas for the 4 triad types, plus the suspended fourth chord. Let's review that here. A major triad has a major third and a perfect fifth. A minor triad has a minor third and a perfect fifth. An augmented triad has a major third and an augmented fifth. And a diminished triad has a minor third and a diminished fifth. And let's not forget the suspended fourth chord. A suspended fourth chord has a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. As we dive deeper into our study of chords, we'll first learn to analyze triads, then we'll learn to build them. In other words, if we see a triad on the staff or know the notes in our head or on the neck, we want to know how to identify and name the triad. So here's how it works. To analyze and label an existing triad, determine the qualities of the third and the fifth. Next, compare the intervals with the 4 triad quality formulas. That's pretty much it. So here are the steps. 1. Measure or identify the interval from the root to the third. Is it a major third or a minor third? 2. Measure or identify the interval from the root to the fifth. Is it a perfect fifth, diminished fifth, or augmented fifth? If the third is a major third and the fifth is a perfect fifth, that matches our major triad formula, so we have a major triad. If the third is minor and the fifth is perfect, that matches our minor triad formula, so we have a minor triad. If the third is major and the fifth is augmented, that matches our augmented triad formula, so we have an augmented triad. If the third is minor and the fifth is diminished, that matches our diminished triad formula, so we have a diminished triad. So think about it this way. In the previous units where we learned about intervals, we were measuring or analyzing a single interval above a note. Now with triads, all we're doing is measuring or analyzing 2 intervals above a note. But now the difference is that we're looking at these 2 intervals and seeing which triad formula it matches. Let's do some for practice. Here you see a D, and above it you see an F sharp, and you see an A. So let's measure the distance from D to F sharp, and also measure the distance from D to A. The distance from D to F sharp is a major third. The distance from D to A is a perfect fifth. So what we see here is a major third and a perfect fifth. We compare that with our 4 triad quality formulas. Which triad has a major third and a perfect fifth? Major. So this is a D major triad. Next we see an F, an A flat above it, and a C above that. Measure the distance from F to A flat. F to A flat is a minor third. Next, measure the distance from F to C. F to C is a perfect fifth. We have a minor third and a perfect fifth. Which triad formula has a minor third and a perfect fifth? That's a minor triad. So we have an F minor triad. Next, we see an A C sharp above it, and an E sharp above that. Let's measure the distance from A to C sharp. A to C sharp is a major third. Next, let's measure the distance from A to E sharp. A to E sharp is an augmented fifth. We have a major third and an augmented fifth. Let's compare that to the triad interval formulas. What kind of triad has a major third and an augmented fifth? That's an augmented triad. So we have an A augmented. Next we see G, B flat, and D flat. So let's measure the distance from G to B flat and then the distance from G to D flat. G to B flat is a minor third. Next we'll measure from G to D flat. G to D flat is a diminished fifth. We have a minor third and a diminished fifth. Which triad interval formula has a minor third and a diminished fifth? It's a diminished triad. So we have a G diminished triad. Next we have a B, an E, and an F sharp. Let's measure the distance from B to E. From B to E is a perfect fourth. B to F sharp is a perfect fifth. Compare that with our formulas. It's not one of our normal triads. It's not major, it's not minor, it's not augmented or diminished. But it does match what we know about a suspended fourth chord. So this is a B suspended chord, or simply put, B sus. Now do a bunch more yourself. Repetition and persistence is the way. Next, let's take a peek into the future. Learning triads is about analyzing two intervals above a root and comparing them to the triad interval formulas. Well, learning seventh chords is about analyzing three intervals above a root and comparing them to the different seventh chord interval formulas. And ninth chords is about analyzing four intervals above the root and comparing them to the different ninth chord interval formulas, and so on and so forth with 11th and 13th chords. You see, once you know your key signatures, you can know your intervals. And once you know your intervals, you can learn about chords. Much of theory moving forward is about knowing interval formulas for chords and scales. So, know your key signatures and know your intervals. Let's back up for a second. Remember that we need to know key signatures two ways. When we see a key signature on the page, we need to know what key it represents. The other way we need to know key signatures is when you write a song in a key, we should be able to know what key signature should be on the staff. So likewise with intervals. Remember, we want to know intervals the same two ways. When we see two notes on the page, we need to be able to identify the interval between them. And the other way, the reverse, when you're writing music on the staff, you should know how to write the interval. So here we go with triads. We need to do the same. We need to know them two ways. When we see a triad written on the staff, we need to be able to identify and label it properly. We'll call this analyzing the triad. And we just learned to do this in this unit. And then two, when we're writing music, we need to be able to build and write the triad properly. We'll learn to do that next in the next unit. We also need to know the best way to write a chord on a piece of music. This is called a chord symbol. A chord symbol represents the same information as writing the individual notes of a chord on the staff, but in sort of a shorthand kind of way. Chord symbols are things like G or D minor or D augmented or E7 or A major 7. We need to learn to write and speak chord symbols. There are many styles of writing chord symbols around the world. A style in one part of the world, or even within the United States, may conflict with the way they're written in other parts of the world, so it's best to use symbols that are pretty universally understood. In my career performing with musicians from around the world, I've seen some pretty interesting ways musicians write chord symbols. As a result, I've been involved in some musical train wrecks where a musician played what they thought the chord symbol meant, only to learn that the person writing the music intended for something completely different to be played. There has never been, to my knowledge, a congress of chord symbol writers get together to agree on a worldwide standardized system. However, through the emergence of notation software like Finale or Sibelius and the proliferation of instructional material in magazines, some people have claimed their way to write chord symbols as the way. I'm not convinced, but then I'm about to do the same thing and be a bit of a hypocrite here. So what I present here is based on my experience and what I know to be the best way to avoid disasters created by misunderstanding. In other words, I'm pretty certain if you use the chord symbols I present here, musicians from pretty much anywhere on the planet will know what you mean. Much later in fretboard biology, there's an entire unit dedicated to the complexity and diversity of chord symbol notation. But we'll start with triads and what I believe to be the best triad chord symbols. So let's learn about writing chord symbols for triads. For major triads. Major triads are best labeled with the letter name only, as in C. Writing C major or CMAJ or CMA is redundant and clutters a chord chart. It's basically unnecessary. And the use of just an uppercase M or the triangle symbol is unclear and could confuse the reader, as these symbols have different meanings in different regions of the world. They really do. Finale uses a large M for major, and it can be confusing. Minor triads. Minor triads are best labeled with the letter name as in C plus MI. Writing C minor or CMIN is more than you need and again clutters a chord chart. Again, use of an uppercase M or a lowercase m is unclear and could confuse the reader. Using a dash as in C minor is also common and universally accepted as an efficient and clear way to write C minor. Augmented triads. Augmented triads are best labeled with the letter name and a plus, as in C+. Writing C augmented or C aug clutters a chord chart. Writing C with a sharp 5 is okay, but sharp 5 should be reserved for chords with sevenths. Much more on that in later units. Diminished triads are best labeled as the letter name and then the little circle, as in C diminished. Writing C diminished or C dim clutters a chord chart. Suspended fourth chords. Suspended fourth chords are best labeled with the letter name of the root and sus or sus4. So that's C sus, or you could write C sus4. Writing C suspended fourth clutters a chord chart. It's unnecessary. Let's talk about power chords. With the use of power chords by guitarists over the past 50 years, some will call this two-note thing a chord, and nobody's going to throw you off the stage for calling it that. It's really called a dyad and can imply a chord with a quality based on the context. We'll talk more about that in a later unit. So what should you know from this unit? Know how to analyze an existing triad. Knowing about triads will lead to our understanding of how chords work together in a key. Knowing how chords work together in a key informs us about all the options for chords, scales, or arpeggios we can play in a song. We'll see you in the next unit. If you find this video helpful, please be sure to click on the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. You can also click the link in the description below to check out the full fretboard biology course when you are ready for a more intensive training program. We'll see you in the next video.